Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mind Matters, Navigating Head Injuries and Concussions. I'm your host, Kiley Como, and I'm the legal nurse consultant here at Shane Smith Law. And today, I'm here with Jamie Severance, survivor of traumatic brain injury, a speaker, and an author. Jamie, it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Likewise, I'm happy to be.
Well, of course, as our audience likely knows, our focus here is to discuss all things brain injury and other related topics. So, Jamie, let's get going. Let's kind of start with when and how you got on this path of brain injury advocacy.
All right. Hey, this is just a heads up. I've got some notes to say for this interview because I'm really nervous. And when I'm nervous, I tend to forget what I'm talking about almost instantly. That's because I have short-term memory loss from severe brain damage. On top of that, I have a voice condition from a tracheostomy. For your listeners, a tracheostomy is when medical professionals make an incision in your airway and put in plastic tubing so you can breathe another way. Having said that, though, things don't go the way they should, and so that's why my voice sounds like that. The notes I'm reading from are actually derived from a LinkedIn article that deals with this subject at length. And even though I'm not a physician, and what I say from here on out is not to be considered as medical advice, I'd like to think I know enough about my injury to speak confidently on it. But I needed that tracheostomy I mentioned earlier because I was involved in a near fatal motor vehicle accident that completely changed my life. It became the subject of a 475-page memoir called The Hayden Diary, Chasing the Prom from the Hospital Bed. Here's the story of my book, and by extension, the answer to your question. How exactly did I become brain damaged? At 17, during my senior year of high school in the fall of 2006, I was the passenger in a life-threatening car crash that left me with a traumatic brain injury, also known as a TBI, which I acquired by a violent jolt to the head. I was in a coma for months, and when I finally woke up, my body didn't feel like my own. I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't swallow, I couldn't remember. The list goes on. After all, what did you expect from bilateral frontal lobe brain damage from a grade 3 diffuse axonal injury? But time didn't stop just because I was in a hospital bed. Life kept rolling on after my accident. My classmates kept going to school, and every day I spent in rehab was another day I was missing from what should have been my final year of high school with my classmates. And then there was my girlfriend at the time. I promised myself I'd recover fast enough to at least make it to prom with her by my side before the academic calendar ended, a mere 5 months away. This creates conflict, and it's often said that conflict is the lifeblood of a fiction book. But the Hayden Diary is stranger than fiction. It's non-fiction. And this is more than just a catchy tagline, because I used the book as a vehicle for my advocacy efforts to promote TBI awareness. It's worth mentioning, though, that there are different types of brain injury. This isn't to minimize the severity of brain injuries, because any kind of brain injury sustained is pretty horrible in itself. But from what I understand, there are two classes of brain injury: acquired and congenital. Acquired brain injuries, as its name suggests, are brain injuries that happen through some sort of triggering event, like a car accident, stroke, sports mishap, etc. Congenital brain injuries, on the other hand, are damage you're born with. Hydrocephalus, for example, is an example of a condition that can cause congenital brain injury. This is to say, I have an acquired TBI. Keep in mind that the severity of acquired brain injuries aren't necessarily worse than one another. Each injury is unique, depending on the specific parts of the brain affected. Acquired injuries are categorized in two different ways. They could either be open or closed. Open injuries occur when something penetrates the skull, such as a bullet or an edged object. Closed injuries are caused by the rapid movement of the brain, such as a concussion or a fall. I have the latter of the two, but my injury was classified as a grade 3. That means it was a severe closed and acquired TBI with the highest mortality rate. That rate is 44.1%. To put this into perspective, imagine flipping a coin. Heads you live, tails you die. Do you have a coin on you by any chance? I'd like to illustrate that.
This is the day and age of debit cards, Jamie. So I do not have any coins.
It's fine. The point is, that's the kind of odds I was facing directly after my injury. 50-50 stuff. Because the effects of moderate to severe TBI are long-lasting to lifelong. And according to the CDC, although I survived, my life expectancy has been shortened by 9 years. 9 years. That's almost a whole decade. This makes sense in the light of the fact that about 90% of patients with severe TBI will never again regain consciousness post-injury. The few who do, like me, usually have formidable limitations. To put the CDC's data into meaningful terms, the average lifespan of Americans is about 76 years. Does that sound right? Alright. And the retirement age for Social Security being about 67 years. This means I'm expected to die before I can claim full retirement benefits. That said, I'm aware that life expectancies represent a statistical average and they don't specifically predict how long I'll live. This is just the CDC's prediction though, for when people like me start dropping off. And I don't dispute this because although you may not be able to tell right away just by casually looking at me, my health challenges stemming from my brain damage are immense. This is what it means to have an invisible disability. Sorry about monopolizing my speaking time there. This is a complex subject and I wanted to provide a comprehensive overview about severe brain trauma from my perspective to your audience.
Absolutely, that's what we're here for. We don't often get survivors of severe brain injuries on it. As you said, most of the time, unfortunately, those folks don't make it, much less make it to be able to relay their story. So we're here for it.
I'm very lucky, and it's like when I was in inpatient rehab. Well, as soon as I woke up, my progress was exponentially fast. It was new developments each week. I just shot up like a rocket. Still took about half a year.
That's impressive. How does this impact your life now? I assume you work, you have a career. How does that impact your self-performance?
Well, I'm a junior copywriter at Mesh Interactive Agency. It's an advertising agency. But how my injury impacts my life can be summed up in one word: disinhibition. Disinhibition is a neuropsychological term for the total lack of social restraint. It's common for TBI survivors to experience this. In fact, according to research from the National Library of Medicine, 30% of all TBI patients experience disinhibition. I'm part of that 30%. big time. But disinhibition isn't unique to TBI though. It's often seen in many conditions affecting the young and old alike, including ADHD, Alzheimer's disease, autism spectrum disorder, and frontotemporal dementia. Disinhibition can even be triggered by a garden variety of factors, even for people who don't have head injury. For example, intense emotional states, alcohol and substance use, and environmental factors like online anonymity can all trigger disinhibition. This is why the public comment section on popular YouTube videos, for example, can be absolutely brutal. For me, with my TBI, I don't always know when disinhibition is considered socially acceptable. For example, and this gets at your question, disinhibition affects my attractiveness as a job candidate because I can't drive. I was 17 when the accident happened, but I never learned how to drive after my injury because my brain damage also affects my executive functioning, which is the brain's ability to think on the fly and make quick decisions, among other things. Being that quick reflexes are essential to driving, it's better for all involved if I don't drive. And this ensures my safety and the safety of others. And I mention executive functioning because it interplays with my struggle with disinhibition. For example, when someone cuts you off on the freeway, you might be a bit shocked, handle it, and maybe curse out the other driver. No big deal, right? To me, if you were to cut me off, it would certainly be unexpected and something that would require quick intervention. And given that my executive function is impaired, I have to make a quick decision on how to handle it, which, if we're being honest here, is usually a poor and impulsive decision. That kind of snap judgment on something as dynamic as a freeway might put lives at risk. That's disinhibition. Think of it like activating airplane mode on a mobile device. When airplane mode is active, wireless communication is disabled. As a result, the device is rendered unable to send or receive input. And when disinhibition happens, my brain can't fully comprehend social cues or consequences. This can show up in employment settings. For instance, in 2019, I borrowed books from the marketing library at my employer, Mesh Interactive Agency, for a copywriting project. While I was getting the books I needed, the radio nearby was playing Man in the Box by Alice in Chains. This toggled my brain's airplane mode. What I did next was dance to that song in front of the whole crew as they tried to work. Granted, this was about 30 minutes or so before lunch, but in retrospect, it wasn't appropriate context. It certainly wasn't professional. A casual observer, they might just shrug this off as eccentric behavior, that it's just my personality, But given the context, that's absolutely disinhibition. This is just another example of what it means to have an invisible disability, where onlookers may perceive you're like everybody else, when under the hood, the reality is much more complicated. These are some of the ways my injury impacts my job. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, you did very well. I think you brought us into a very imaginable circumstance that we could all put ourselves in. So I appreciate that. That was very helpful. So, when as you were telling your story, I'm thinking of, I'm putting myself in your shoes in the workplace, and I'm thinking, well, how would I go about, fitting in? Certainly, I would imagine your employer works with you in some way. They maybe have created some accommodations for you.
In terms of special employer accommodations, as I pointed out earlier, I can't drive. So finding a place that allows me to completely work virtually without my presence in the office works best for me. Finding such an arrangement is more feasible because, I'm a writer, and writing is done electronically anyway. It's a sedentary activity. And that's pretty much it in terms of special accommodation as defined by the Americans with Disabilities Act. Informally, though, patience and understanding are also crucial factors because, as I said at the outset, I have short-term memory loss, severe short-term memory loss, as well as speaking difficulties. I also have the attention span of an earthworm. That's thanks to no smart smartphone. There's that too, but that's also been exacerbated by my injury. In fact, according to a neuropsychological evaluation I've taken in recent years, I meet the legal requirements for ADHD. I have strategies to mitigate the effects of all of it, like using notes for speaking engagements such as this. I consider myself fortunate not to need much apart from the driving limitation, but that's huge in a state like New Hampshire, where the most populous city is about 100,000 people.
Again, I think it's, you seem very open, as you said earlier, about everything you've dealt with. And so I can only imagine that, you're very open with your coworkers, and they've gotten to know you and are very accommodating in that informal way as well. So I imagine that it's quite the relationship you have.
Interestingly enough, that openness, the reason why I'm open, is actually a symptom of my brain injury. I tend to overshare. And certainly, the notes I'm reading from are based on a LinkedIn article, as I mentioned earlier. Well, and in that LinkedIn article called Raising TBI Awareness from Memoir, Raising TBI Awareness from Memoir, from Hospital Bed to Bookshelf. In that LinkedIn article, I certainly did my whole share of overshare. It's both a blessing, but also a weakness.
Understandable. But I think in this context here, we're all benefiting from it. So I think we're seeing the blessing piece. So I appreciate sharing that. So with everything you've told us so far, I've got to wonder how you seem to be very successful. How do you remain, performing at a high level, and then you keep that sense of that normalcy?
Oh boy, successful? Me? Oh man, that's oh geez. But I am prioritizing Google search results. If you Google my legal name, which is Jamie Severance, as well as my pen name, which is Jamie Lewis Severance, as my middle name, whatever. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'm successful in that respect. Not many people can say Google knows who they are after all. But this metric of success, it couldn't have come if I didn't have strong support systems. It's also important to have strong coping systems as well to help manage your mental health and cultivate that new normal, however that looks like, in a time of crisis. For example, when I was in inpatient rehab in 2007, following my car accident, as I mentioned earlier, I was missing my senior year with my classmates. And to cope with that feeling, I wrote poems about people who found themselves in desperate situations, like being stuck while wandering in the desert without water. Really, just tragic and depressing stuff. I would then share these poems with any staff members who would read them. I think psychologically, I was expressing how it felt to miss my senior year, and I shared my poetry because I wanted those feelings validated. When I was discharged from inpatient rehab, I went to college for creative writing, double minoring in English and sociology. The point is, I turned what started as a coping mechanism, and I refined it into the very skill I use to make a living. I guess what I'm saying here is that being adaptable is key to transforming personal tragedy into true success. After all, even Einstein said that in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. And I think that's an encouraging thought.
Wow, gave me chills right there. I really love that quote. I've read that before, so very appropriate. Jamie, thank you so much. I would love to know, are there any other thoughts, Jamie, you wanted to share with us or our audience at this time?
Well, again, I'll remind our audience, my remarks are paraphrased from a LinkedIn article I wrote called Raising TBI Awareness from Memoir, From Hospital Bed to Bookshelf. You can either Google that or connect with me on LinkedIn. As I said before, I'm a known entity on Google. So if you Google my name, Jamie Severance, or Jamie Lewis Severance, you'll find my social sharing buttons. And all you gotta do is click my LinkedIn. That easy.
I've already done that. I've got you pulled up. Very easy to find. I would highly encourage our listeners to do just that. Some great content for sure. Jamie, thank you so much.
Hey.
Jamie, I got to say before we leave that I am a firm believer that things happen for a reason, and your injury wasn't supposed to happen to you, but it's being used to lift a lot of other people up. Got a lot of people in our audience that maybe not suffered such a big injury as yours, but maybe know people that have suffered maybe more mild versions of your injury and will gain greatly from this information and content. So again, really appreciate you joining us.
I'm aware that the firm specializes in what's considered a minor brain injury. Well, that minor is kind of a misnomer.
Yeah.
Because any kind of brain injury is pretty horrible. That's why my perspective I figured was so valuable, because it's on the severe end, and you usually do a minor, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Minor is a bit of a misnomer. You're right. It's all terrible, but we certainly appreciate your expertise and your passion. It means a lot to us. It means even more to our audience. So thank you, Jamie.
You're making me feel important.
Hey, you are. Well, everybody, that's going to do it for another episode of Mind Matters, Navigating Head Injuries and Concussions. Again, I would like to extend our gratitude to Jamie Severance for joining us today and sharing his expansive knowledge and expertise with us. Please look for his book, The Hayden Diary, Chasing the Prom from a Hospital Bed. I hope that our audience has enjoyed being a part of this really fascinating discussion as much as I have, and is walking away with a deeper understanding and appreciation for recovering and living and thriving with a brain injury. Please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel to keep up with our latest and greatest content, and leave us a comment today. Let us know what you thought of our conversation. And as always, remember, if you're in pain, call Shane at 980-999-9999. See you next time.
In pain, so I call Shane. 980-999-9999. In pain, call Shane.